Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, warm welcome to everyone participating in presence and online in this session, Forest for Social Cohesion. This session is organized by the Forest and Farm Facility and the Social Forestry team of FAO. I have the pleasure to introduce you to the moderator of this session, Mrs. Femi Pinto. Femi is Executive Director of the Non-Timber Forest Products Exchange Program Asia, which is a network of community-based organizations and NGOs that advocates for and works towards the sustainable management of forests and natural resources, especially of non-timber forest products in South and Southeast Asia. Femi is from the Philippines, has close to 3 decades of combined field experience working with indigenous communities, management in NGOs and advocacy, and convening of regional and multi-stakeholder networks around forests and natural resources management, governance, and livelihoods, especially in the sub-regions, ASEAN and Mekong. Femi holds a master's degree and had previously served as a senior program and management functions and international development organizations and regional program initiatives in the Mekong and Southeast Asia. Her field experience on indigenous people rights and community-based natural resource management covers most of the countries of this region. So the floor is yours, Femi. No? We have the pleasure to have you as the moderator of this session. Over.
Thank you, Johnny. Good morning to all who are here and also online on this lovely day 3 of the Congress. It is my honor and privilege to moderate the session for today, this session being under sub-theme 4 on forests and human health and well-being, revisiting the connections. We will delve into those aspects of connections, some foundational elements where forests benefit people and communities beyond the economic aspects, but also on social and cultural aspects, and on the other hand, where people and communities also benefit the forest ecosystems and landscapes with how well they are bound together and supporting each other, and this in turn redounds to greater protection and management of forests and expanding its provisions for well-being. When we speak of well-being, there are a number of elements that ensure it: human aspiration, vision, and the support to fulfill them, food, basic needs provisions, but also of social connections and solidarity, the vibrancy of culture and sense of belongingness, identity, and agency. This session on forests for social cohesion will bring together experiences and the expertise of our practitioners here with us today from government, civil society groups, researcher institutions, and movements to discuss their key lessons and findings on how different forms of social cohesion can help form the glue of sustainable forest landscapes. To begin, I'm very pleased to introduce and welcome our distinguished speaker, who will deliver the keynote for this special session on forests for social cohesion and well-being, Fabiola Martha Muñoz Dodero. Fabiola has 20 years of professional experience working in the public sector, the private sector, and international cooperation. She has experience leading multidisciplinary teams. She was Deputy Director of the Cooperation Project of the U.S. Forest Service in Peru, Executive Director of the Forest and Wildlife Service of Peru, Minister of the Environment on 2 occasions, and the first woman Minister of Agriculture and Irrigation of Peru. She is a lawyer by profession with a diploma in intercultural education, master's studies in social policy with a mention in gender, population, and development. She coordinates the Coalition for Sustainable Production and the Group of Governors for Climate and Forests in Peru. Please welcome Fabiola Martha Muñoz Dodero.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity to stay here, and for the people who stay here, and for the people that it's looking us. And thank you, FAO, to invite me to make this speech and to share some lessons that we learned in this process, working with native communities, a small group of producers, civil society, governors, and national government. And the idea is to share some ideas with you about this process, to talk about the social cohesion and the forestry. Next, please. Our objective, working on forests, is try to maintain the forest alive, the stand forest. And we think that it's really important, not only for the connection that has with health, it's important for the people. People, it's really live with the forest. In the country like Peru, we have native communities and small producers. And it's really important for the livelihoods, for the food security, for the medicine. We have a traditional use of plants in the country, and it's really important for the people. The fruits, biodiversity, wildlife, and environmental services. We have some changes in our laws, in our regulations, to permit the communities to use in a sustainable way these products and the forest. But we have a lot of challenge, because it's not enough the effort that we do. For a native community, it's really difficult to manage the forest in a formal way. They can manage that. They can access to the products, they can make the conservation or manage the forest, but when they want to sell their products, for example, there's a lot of difficult regulations, in some cases, that it's really difficult for them to enter in the formal market. It's a huge challenge for native communities and small producers, how they can improve, or how the government can improve the mechanisms to make these groups part of our system. And during, I don't know, 20 or 30 years, we are trying to change the way that we build our regulations. For example, we open the possibility for prior consultation for native communities. And the forestry law in Peru, for example, is the first law, it's the first regulation that we have that open the door for a prior consultation with native communities. But it's not an easy process. It's really difficult to work with the different ministers or people in the government, because not all of us has the same vision about the importance of the participation of the rural communities. The first and important idea that I want to share with you today is that the objective is not only for the forest, it's for the people and the mechanisms that they have and the livelihoods and the way that they connect with the forest. And not only the people who live in the forest, it's for us too. We need to maintain that forest for the water, for the health, for the environment, for climate change. It's really important, the challenge that we confront in this moment. Next, please. But, next, please. The next, and the next. One more? Okay, thank you. But we confront a huge challenge. Deforestation, it's really a huge problem in countries like Peru. We lost last year 200,000 hectares of forest. Because the pandemic, there's a lot of people who return to the Amazon from the cities because they don't have opportunities for work and they need to return. And because this, they try to do the first thing that it's possible. And the most easy is go to the jungle, cut the forest, and put corn or try to have some cattle or some kind of product. Because it's difficult for the people to find a way to manage in a sustainable way that forest. And pandemia, the COVID pandemia, pressed a lot. But before the pandemic, we have the same problem. It's not 200, it's 1,000 hectares that we lost, or 1,500. And it's because we have two really big conditions. One is the small producers. In a country like Peru and other countries in the region, the most important pressure for the forest is the small producers. They change units than less than 5 hectares to put, for example, cocoa or coffee, no? In other cases, they put palm, but in Peru, the principal, it's cocoa and coffee, or cattle, no? But deforestation is an economic decision. This is the most important idea that I want to share with you. It's not because the people, it's a bad persons that we have in the Amazon. It's because they need to change this land use to manage in a way that they receive some income. If they have the forest, the standing forest, it's really difficult that they receive something. We receive a lot of environmental services. We receive air, clean, water, temperature, but people can't live with us. For a small producer, they need to pay the education and the health for their family. And how he's going to do that with this stand forest? We need to find mechanisms to solve this problem, because it's not far situation. We have that situation each day, and they need to take decisions each day. The other thing, it's illegal economies. Mining, illegal logging, trafficking or narco trafficking, coca or things like that. But this is another thing. In that way, the government needs to work and stop these illegal economies. But the only way to stop that is to create opportunities. Opportunities for the people that can decide it, go in the correct way. But we don't have enough budget, we don't have enough resources, we don't have enough knowledge about how we can improve the mechanisms to manage the forest in a sustainable way for this kind of economy, local economy, for the people who live in the Amazon forest. And that kind of pressing, it's making that each year it's more difficult for the people to maintain the forest. We don't have a law, for example, for the regulation of carbon market. We don't have. We have some beginning initiative for recognized environmental services. And for example, the government has an initiative to pay, like in Costa Rica and in other countries, to pay the native community for maintain the stand forest, but pay it's less than $3 per hectare per year. And if you are going to compare that with the amount of money that the people of the community needs for maintain the community and have food, health services, it's not enough. The idea is that they can use that money to create some business with the forest and use that in a sustainable way. But we have a really long distance to walk to be really sustainable in this kind of management with the communities with this kind of payment. The deforestation, it's an economy decision. For that reason, the way that we need to work to stop deforestation, it's an economic decision too. Next, please. And how we can do that? The idea is that we create opportunities for a new economy that is based on the bioeconomy, to use or to see or to have the idea to manage the land in an integral way. Not only products in the traditional agricultural that we have in our countries. The idea is that we can put on value all the ways that we can use the forest, like ecotourism, for example, or agroforestry systems to put coffee and cacao without deforestation. And it's really important to develop capacities. We need to do a lot, but if we don't have a finance system to help us, the small producers, to make this change, we are not going to be able to do that. The climate change is a challenge for all the world. We need to work with the finance system. Probably you didn't know that in a country like Peru, a small producer, if they want to go to the bank or to a rural agency for have some money to improve the production, or for example, to change to a technical system for irrigation, the tax that they need to pay, I don't know if it's the tax, the interest, it's correct the word, interest that they need to pay, it's 70%. How is possible that a small producer is going to make all the changes that they need to do to be more productive in the same area if they need to pay 70% of interest to the bank per year? It's not really a possibility for them. And how is the way that they want to improve or to have more income? Extend the areas. We need to work to be more productive in the same area, because now they produce 20% than the possibility that they have in that area. But because they don't have access to the finance system or to the developed capacities to do that, the only way that they have is to extend the area. And this is not sustainable. And in a country like Peru, this is 95% of the deforestation. It's not, we need to stop illegal mining, of course, but the principal problem that we have is this small deforestation system. Next, please. And for that reason, it's really important that we work together, creating opportunities in a collective action to change this. This is one example that we work for COCOA in Peru, and the coalition that I am the coordinator, we work together, private sector, national government, regional government, cooperation, market, all the people who work in the chain, working together to improve the capacity of the producers, to help them to access to finance, to contact markets, responsible markets that are going to pay and help them to make the change that we need to do. It's not an easy thing, but we are really committed with this, and we feel that it's the only way. It's the only opportunity that we have to stop deforestation and to maintain the stand forest. It's working together. With the small people, with the native communities, they are key to maintain the forest. They are key to help us to maintain these conditions and to work together. It's the only way that we are going to face this challenge. If we are not going to do that, we are going to continue losing the forest and all the things that the forest has: biodiversity, food for the people, stabilization for the climate, and the opportunity to face the climate change challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Fabiola, for that strong message to start us off this morning. You've helped us set the stage of the session that ultimately our goal is really to keep the forest standing, but not forest for itself, but for the people who really depend on them and where also the opportunities lie. And most of all, you mentioned about forest communities also being the movers, this being an economic decision, that they also can put that decision also in their hands. And at the same time, that the forest ecosystem extends beyond these communities, but also law, policy, cooperation between different actors, and also the markets. So to move us forward with the session, again, I wanted to give an overview, an extension of the overview of this session, the primary outcome of which is for us to be able to increase and promote understanding of why social cohesion in forest landscapes is important. Fabiola kicked us off on one of the main elements, really about cooperation and partnership that would enable that cohesion, collective action, and the role of forest and farm producer organizations in this effort. There are a few questions that we wanted to answer, and the rest of our panel will provide that. First one being, how can forest farm producer organizations facilitate greater social inclusion by investing in services or by working in partnership with government? How can equitable empowerment of individuals and champions such as women within forest farm producer organizations create an enabling environment and facilitate social cohesion? And what is the youth involvement in this regard? And the last one is also to look further into the protection of primary and intact forests, which Fabiola already alluded to. So I will introduce our 5 panelists for this morning. I hope the last one is here. Ms. Xiang Ma, who is joining us virtually, and is the forest officer from the Community-Based Forestry Division at the Food and Agriculture Organization. Welcome, Xiang Ma. We have Ms. Gertrude Kabusimbi Kenyangi. So I may invite you to come to the front and the table and join Fabiola. She is from the Support for Women in Agriculture and Environment, SWAGEN, in Uganda. And we have Ms. Mylene Makabuhay from the Asian Farmers Association for Sustainable Rural Development. We have Mr. Atmis Erdogan from the University of Bartın in Turkey. And just to check if Claudette Labonte, coordinator for COICA in the Amazon, has arrived. If not, hope she can still catch up. We were not able to check if she had managed to actually come and fly in. Hopefully there was no trouble in that, but if so, we will still continue. So our panelists are here. I will I will introduce them further later before their presentations. But first off, first in our panel is Xiang Ma. She is joining us virtually from very early morning in Rome. Xiang Ma is responsible for the work on social protection in forestry. In recent years, Xiang has coordinated the work at both global and country levels on expanding social protection coverage to forest-dependent communities, strengthening coherence between social protection and forestry, and enhancing the role of forest producer organizations in social protection. Now, Xiang Ma, you have the floor. We have the virtual floor. Go ahead.
Thank you, Phoebe, for your wonderful introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, distinguished participants, depends on where you are. Yes, I think I have PPT, yes, okay, thank you. So it is my pleasure to speak at this very important session. I'm going to talk about promoting the role of forest and farm producer organizations in social protection. Next slide, please. Social protection is increasingly being adopted as a strategy for mitigating poverty, food insecurity, and vulnerability to shocks in developing countries. The Sustainable Development Goals indicate the commitment of the international community to end poverty and hunger by 2030. Countries are called upon to expand coverage of national social protection programs to achieve substantial coverage of the poor and the vulnerable by 2030. Since 2014, FAO has explored the topic on social protection for forest-dependent communities through country case studies, global studies, and various workshops at national and international levels. The studies have revealed that forest-dependent communities are frequently vulnerable to various types of risks and shocks throughout their life cycle. They are particularly exposed to environmental, health, economic, social, and political risks. So the keynote presentation also mentioned about various vulnerabilities. So therefore, forest-dependent communities require social protection that can help mitigate multiple risks and enhance their economic and productive capacity. However, the social protection coverage of forest-dependent communities is very limited. Next slide, please. Studies and workshops have also identified that forest and farm producer organizations and other community-based organizations can play a very important role in social protection. Evidence shows that these rural organizations can contribute to the design and implementation of national social protection policies and programs, which can result in increase of social protection coverage for forest-dependent communities. Many rural organizations can also provide informal social protection to their members, including social insurance, informal risk sharing, mutual assistance, and social services. A common approach is the pooling of contributions from various members to create a common fund which can be used to support members in times of need. This intervention has proved to be effective for financial inclusion and building resilience against shocks, including the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide, please. There are 4 key elements in the process of increasing access to national social protection programs. A very important entry point has been identified by various studies and workshops and recently practiced by the producer organizations in Ghana and Kenya, with support of forest and farm facility. This entry point is to identify forest-dependent communities as vulnerable groups, to organize training and to undertake data collection and profiling. The data collected will be included in the National Social Protection Registry system. Ghana Federation of Forest and Farm Producers has just organized a 4-day training on social protection programs and data collection. Kenya Charcoal Producer Associations have collected data for 450 charcoal producers in 2 counties. The key factor of success has proved to be the collaboration between producer organizations and the Ministry of Social Protection throughout the process. The Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection of Ghana has provided trainers for the training. And the Kenya National Social Protection Secretariat provided the data collection tool. Forest and Farm Facility acts as the accelerator in the process. It facilitates the collaboration between producer organizations and the Ministry of Social Protection and provides technical and financial support for training and data collection. The main outputs achieved are that poor and vulnerable forest and farm producers are included in the National Social Protection Registry system. And these people benefit from accessing existing social protection programs. The vulnerable charcoal producers in 1 county of Kenya have already started receiving cash transfer from the Emergency Drought Response Program. Next slide, please. The key actions for rural organizations to undertake have also been identified based on the practices of Ghana and Kenya. The first key action is to establish partnership with the Ministry of Social Protection. In Ghana, a memorandum of understanding between the ministry, the federation, and the facility is expected to be established soon. The second key action is to scale up implementation for expanding access to national social protection programs. Ghana Producer Federation is planning to undertake data collection for 17 forest and farm producer organizations, while Kenya Producer Association will extend data collection for charcoal producers in other counties. The third key action is policy and legislation advocacy. The Ghana Producer Federation will join efforts with the ministry in the ongoing national advocacy on the passage of the Ghana Social Protection Bill into law. Kenya Producer Association will advocate national social protection policy and programs. For promoting the provision of informal social protection, an important action is to invest in services, including mobilization of financial assistance and capacity building. Next slide, please. In summary, the key messages are that forest and farm producer organizations and community-based organizations can play an important role in contributing to the design and implementation of national social protection programs and in provision of informal social protection. Forest and farm producer organizations can support in expanding access to national social protection programs by building partnership with the Ministry of Social Protection, scaling up data collection in order to include forest-dependent communities in the social protection registry, and advocating for national social protection legislation and policy. Next slide. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Shangma. I hope you can stay for a little bit longer without me for the questions that we have later on. Thank you for introducing to us the role of forest and farm producer organizations and also for social protection programs, both formal and informal. And while we noticed that oftentimes state service provision for social protection can be patchy, there are also successful cases nowadays, and with the case of Ghana and Kenya that Shangma had provided for us today. I will go and move on to our next speaker, Ms. Gertrude Gabusingi Kenyangi. She is a Ugandan forestry activist, and very much pleased to have you here. She received the Wangari Maathai Forest Champions Award in 2015 in recognition of her efforts to promote the conservation and sustainable use of her country's forest resources. Since then, she had planted over 1 million trees in the Ruoho and West Bugwe Natural Forest Buffer Zones and has led the Forest Edge community women to establish tree nurseries boasting more than 5 million indigenous tree seedlings, which have been distributed to the Forest Edge community households for planting in the agroforest, reforestation, and afforestation format. I welcome Gertrude Gabusingi Kenyangi to the floor.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I'm very delighted to be on this session today, Forests for Social Cohesion. Well, forests, as a resource, have great potential for social cohesion. For instance, they support livelihoods. Women tend to depend on forests for fruits, flowers, roots, and leaves, for food and medicine, and firewood and charcoal for cooking. Materials for agricultural implements, like handles for hoes, fodder for livestock, and grazing for livestock in forests, and collection of a range of marketable non-timber forest products. Men, on the other hand, depend on forests for game meat and wild honey. Oh, you haven't put the slide, I'm sorry. Please move the slide. Next. Sorry. Okay, so that's the one. Yeah, men depend on forests for game meat, wild honey, firewood, charcoal for sale, and timber for sale. Materials for agricultural implements, just the same as women, except that they are more oriented towards the selling. But both men and women attach cultural and spiritual values to the forests. Next slide, please. No, the previous one. Previous, okay. I can't see from here. So you're going to forgive me, I'm not going to follow very much. Okay, so when we get to men, both men and women attach culture and spiritual values to forests. When we get to men and women's differentiated actions in and their effects on the forests, as primary users and managers of forest products in many communities, women play a crucial role in the forest restorative strategies. They save, they share seeds, they propagate and nurture trees to maturity in an agroforest setting, as well as a reforestation and afforestation setting. On the other hand, the men's action are more oriented to economic gain. They harvest timber and they burn charcoal. Next slide, please. However, there are matters of justice in forestry that threaten social cohesion. For instance, given various socioeconomic and cultural inequalities and legal impediments within the forest sector, women and often other marginalized groups, such as indigenous peoples, the poor, the youth, handicapped, and poor men, continue to experience ongoing exclusion in many societies that limit their ability to fully participate in, contribute to, and benefit from forests. As a result, while women in forest-dependent communities contribute considerably to the management of forests, they do not often benefit from forest-related investment and or they are excluded in relevant decision-making. They also often face large inequalities around forest and land tenure, as well as possess fewer assets to overcome such hurdles. Next, please. In spite of the foregoing, in spite of the above, women's participation in decision-making has been proved to have intrinsic value. There is strong evidence, especially in India and Nepal, that shows conservation outcomes were improved in forest projects by providing women with more power in decision-making. A higher proportion of women participants in local institutions of forest governance is related to significantly greater improvements in forest condition and conservation. According to UNDP 2011 Human Development Report, it cites a study of 61 countries which shows that per capita number of women and environment NGOs is negatively correlated with levels of deforestation. The higher the number of women's NGOs, the lower the deforestation. Next slides, please. Both men and women are key agents of change. Women and men should not be looked at as two separate categories, but as people living in a system that constructed them as not equal. Both women and men are key agents of change, and their unique but often differentiated knowledge, skills, and experience are put to use differently and are central to their either forest regeneration or forest degradation and deforestation. Studies also show that countries with higher representation of women in Congress or Parliament are likely to set aside protected land areas and to ratify multilateral environment agreements. So, having looked at the two sides, both men and women, and their contribution to forests, we see that forests have a high potential for social cohesion. To attain social cohesion and women's empowerment, gender power relations in forestry have got to be transformed. The forest benefits women and men. The forest benefits that women and men share are constituted through rules, norms, values, beliefs, and practices in a given society by which resources are allocated, tasks and responsibilities are assigned, and value is given. Therefore, institutional rules must change, and the underlying incentive structure has got to be overwhelmed. Gender equality is the key for social cohesion in forestry, and it cannot be an add-on. We cannot put new wine in old wineskins. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gertrude. That was a very powerful message that you left us with. Thank you for highlighting the crucial role and contributions of both women and men. But as you say, that there is also already evidence that if we highlight and cultivate the intrinsic value of women, the likelihood of being able to even enhancing further and addressing the threats to forest will even be made more possible. I will then move on to another sector, which would be the youth, and that will be presented by our next panelist. Let me invite the voice on behalf of the youth sector. Mylene Makabuhay is the coordinator for the Youth and Land Rights Agenda of the Asian Farmers Association for Sustainable Rural Development, AFA. She has been working in the fields of environmental management, public health, sustainable agriculture, and youth empowerment since 2011. Ms. Makabuhay holds an MSc in Environment and Development degree from the University of Leeds and an MSc in Environmental Science degree from the Philippines. Mylene, you can take the floor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Femi, and good morning, everyone. First, let me thank the Korea Forest Service and the Food and Agriculture Organization for organizing this Congress. And we would also like to extend our appreciation to the Forest and Farm Facility for inviting us to participate and speak in this sub-team session. The theme of this Congress is building a green, healthy, and resilient future with forests. The discussions that we've had since the opening ceremony on Monday highlight the need for urgent actions to build a future where people can enjoy the environmental, social, and economic benefits from forests. However, I believe that the future is now. The future is already here. It is already happening. And while there are long-term benefits to the conservation, restoration, and sustainable use of forests and farms, the urgent actions that we are doing now have direct, immediate impacts, especially to young farmers and forest producers. Despite the rising food demand and the high proportion of youth in rural Asia and the critical role of youth in food security, many youth are not attracted to agriculture or forestry simply because it does not earn. Those who remained in rural areas are not prioritized in many government programs and are not involved in decision-making processes at the household or organizational levels. For this reason, young people decide to seek better opportunities in cities, resulting to an aging farmer population and threatening our food security. No farmer, no food, no future. However, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw a reversal of this trend, and we were faced with the challenge of providing food and livelihood not only to the young people who returned from the cities, but also to those that remained. What then did forest and farm producer organizations or FFPOs did during this crucial time? Through a project supported by FFF, AFA conducted several leadership trainings of young women and men farmers in 10 countries in Asia. These trainings led to the establishment of National Young Farmers Committees, or NYFCs, in the FFPOs. Together, these NYFCs formed the Regional Young Farmer Committee of AFA, thereby providing a platform for young farmers to have a seat in the FFPO's governance structure, as well as be engaged and take the lead in policy advocacy activities and service delivery. Through the project, we also launched the NYFC grant, where we provided $3,000 to young farmers for their enterprise or advocacy idea. Within a span of 3 months, we saw tangible change. For instance, the NYFC of Farmer and Nature Net, or FNN, in Cambodia saw the youth's engagement in the value chain in their local communities. They coordinated with the local agricultural cooperative. They surveyed the unsold stocks of local farmers. They surveyed the communes for potential retailers or wholesale buyers. They developed packaging and marketing materials. They established a distribution center, and they sold the products directly to consumers and other market actors. The national youth leader of FNN and the chair of the local agriculture cooperative played a vital role by providing advice to the youth sellers with monitoring, follow-up support, data, reporting, and coordination. In a span of 3 months, they finalized 10 contract agreements with farmer members, to supply more than 3,000 kilograms of vegetables per day. The capacity of the youth sellers was also increased. They become more familiar with how to estimate demand, supply, time frame, product dissemination, data recording, communication with consumers, packaging materials, marketing materials, and many more. The youth themselves generated an extra income via the distribution fee, so they earned an additional of $12 a day per person. And as farmers themselves, they were able to supply safe and organic products directly to consumers at a premium price. Lastly, the chair of the FNN NYFC was invited to be a guest speaker in a live show where he shared about the best practices in mobilizing and engaging youth in rural areas. So even when the project has already ended, the youth's engagement in the local value chain still continued, and they're eyeing for replication on expanding in other cities. Just imagine the impact that will have with more financing, more support, and more collaboration with everyone in this room and in other areas of the world. We do have other examples, but I do not have a lot of time, so I urge everyone to visit AFA's website and social media account, and to also attend the side event that we are co-organizing with AIPP and NTFPEP, called the Community Speak About Forests and Livelihoods, Enabling Mechanisms for a Successful Community Enterprise in Forested Landscapes, at 5:30 p.m. later in room 307B. But in terms of strategies, what does this tell us? First, the youth is willing and able. They have lots of ideas on how to make their farms productive. They have lots of ideas on how to make agriculture and forestry attractive to young people. They have ideas on how resources can best be allocated and maximized to transform food systems, the agriculture and forestry sector in a sustainable manner. Organizing them and giving them a platform is giving us a chance to experience a green, healthy, and resilient now and future with farms and forests. Second, we need to invest in FFPOs. The FFPOs play a vital role in social cohesion at the local, national, and regional levels. They have been instrumental in addressing access to productive resources, access to financing, access to markets, and access to farm inputs. They have helped extend the outreach of governments, aid agencies, and other development partners, including in climate change adaptation process. And they are in the position to identify the needs of the local communities and to communicate those needs and the type of assistance to the government and other partners. Most importantly, they serve as the starting point for youth's platform in the agriculture and forestry sector, as shown by FNN in Cambodia and many others. We need to invest in them through capacity building, such as training them how to conduct trainings targeting the youth, financing and support, or how can they provide business development services and financing options to young farmers, and institutionalization, or how to mainstream the youth agenda within their plans and programs. FFPOs are our link. Let's prioritize partnerships with them and seal the deal in our long-term plans, policies, and programs. Lastly, let's make it fun. Let us savor the youth's vitality and energy. At AFA, during the pandemic, we launched the Young Farmers Dance Challenge and Young Farmers Open Letter Challenge, with winning young farmers receiving a small grant and business coaching sessions. And trust me when I say that the young farmers did not disappoint with their entries nor their enterprise ideas. Given this, we can slowly but surely address the fundamental questions about the future of young women and men farmers and forest producers, and of the agriculture and forestry sector themselves. Eventually, we can make staying in the rural areas, in farms in forests, and forests in farms, the new it thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mylene. You've energized the room, and you are such an able representative of the sector. Then I'll move to the next speaker, our final speaker, Mr. Atmis Erdogan from the University of Bartın in Turkey. Professor Dr. Erdogan works on forestry policy and administration. He is an academician with the Faculty of Forestry of Bartın University. His research interests are participation in forestry, forest society relations, cooperatives, urban forestry, protected areas, environmental protection, and sustainable forestry. He will share with us findings from his research on gender differentiation in rural development and cooperatives in Turkey. Professor Armis.
Thank you, Femi. Good morning, everyone. I am the last speaker, and all speakers are women, except me, in this session. But also, I will talk about women, the producing women of Turkey. I have prepared this study with my colleague, Hikmet Batuhan Günşen and Yıldıray Lise. I represent Bartın University Forest Faculty, and also I would like to thank to Foresters Association of Turkey for their support. Next, please. There are 7 million forest villagers are living in 23,000 forest villages in Turkey. And they are the lowest income group in Turkey with limited access to education and health services. Forestry cooperatives are seen as an essential tool for developing forest villages. Mainly, they have been engaged in cutting trees and transporting logs in state forest. In the last decades, the number of members of these cooperatives has decreased due to higher age of villages, mostly men. Excluding the role of women in cooperatives is one of the factors preventing the development of forestry cooperatives. The situation has led to more active women being organized in women's cooperatives. The establishment of women's cooperatives has increased since 2000 to enable women to participate in the country's workforce at a higher rate. These cooperatives enable women living in rural areas to be more active in social life. Next slide, please. There are 300 women's cooperatives with 3,000 members. In this study, these cooperatives were selected from women's cooperatives in rural areas. They operate in different regions and process different non-wood forest products. The cooperatives chosen as examples are Amesia Working Bees Women's Initiative, Devrek Villages Agricultural Development Cooperatives, and Anadolu Sisters Women's Initiative. Next slide, please. Women's cooperatives were established by organizing from the bottom up, not by top down as a state policy, like the male-dominated cooperatives established in previous periods. That's why women's cooperatives reflect the true cooperative spirit. The success of women's cooperatives and their dynamism have enabled women to increase their education level and improve their social and economic status. Women members have a desire for improvement, and this has enabled them to create their trademarks. Having their brands has given them the opportunity to stay in the market and the business more comfortably in marketing channels. Next slide, please. Women's cooperatives mainly work in the food sector. They obtain almost all the raw materials they use from their regions and the agriculture and forest areas. They add social and economic value to local people. The use of natural products in the regions creates different opportunities for women's cooperatives in marketing. Restaurants and food companies have started to support women who produce these products. In addition to this, some metropolitan municipalities provide significant support by selling their products in the municipalities' markets. On the other hand, the cooperation of women's cooperatives with other cooperatives and the fact that they sell each other's products in sales stores, it shows the important solidarity between women's cooperatives. Moreover, women's cooperatives sell their products through their website and their social media accounts. Next slide, please. The main problems of women's cooperatives are they have difficulty finding young members in the rural areas. In the summer months, when production is very intense, they encounter a shortage of labor force. They also have difficulties in obtaining raw materials. The other main problem of women's cooperative is high taxes. There are various difficulties in label design and analysis of the food products they produce. Next slide, please. It is possible to overcome the problem of the women's cooperatives. First, the state should produce policies that will pave the way for these cooperatives. State may reduce the taxes it receives from these cooperatives and take measures to increase their competitiveness in the market is critical. It may allocate space for raw material production to these cooperatives and helping them in solving technical problems. This will be an important opportunity that paves the way for these cooperatives. The creation of incentives that will enable the participation of young people in these cooperatives will ensure the supply of workforce needed during busy periods and the reflection of the dynamism of the youth in these cooperatives. Next slide, please. Establishing an effective network among women's cooperatives will contribute to joint purchasing for some inputs and reduce cost, offer products on a common platform, and provide competitive flexibility in setting prices. Women's cooperatives are at the forefront of the social and economic welfare of women. To increase the effectiveness of this, encouraging arrangements should be made to establish women's cooperatives in different parts of Turkey and to ensure that young people become members. The strengthening of women's cooperatives will enable women in Turkey to be more active in social life and trade. It will create an important opportunity to eliminate gender inequality in the country. Next slide, please. Thank you for your attention, and the producing women of Turkey greet you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ordagan, for that concrete contribution about women's empowerment. through cooperative formation and their various programs and activities, from production to marketing and efforts of the organization in membership building, and also working on policy and market competitive concerns and your recommendations. Particularly also interesting that you mentioned the word spirit of cooperativism, which I believe is a powerful, intangible, essential to social cohesion. Along with spirit, you have the energy that Mylene gave in her example. You have the vision from our keynote, Fabiola, and also from that intrinsic value of a women in the presentation of Gertrude. Now we have finished all the presentations, and we have a few minutes open for questions from the floor. Please, we have some microphones. I invite you to go up the microphone and ask your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, Latia Lipper from Thunen Institute of Forestry, Hamburg, Germany. Actually, my question would go to the professor in case of the women cooperative. You mentioned in your slide that the main problem of the women cooperative is related to also the shortage of the labor force in the community. What would be the main reason? Could you please elaborate more? This is because of the migrants or because of the work is not very attractive for people to work in the women cooperative?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. We have cooperatives, forest cooperatives, but that cooperatives have men members, not much women members, because in cooperatives, village cooperatives, they cut trees and take money from the state. Just as workers, they are in cooperatives. They have no other working area. But women in country, particularly in rural areas, they are behind of the men. Now, after the 2000, women see this and they start to establish women's cooperatives in rural areas. They produce some products women can produce. For example, noodles, marmalade, pulse, molasses, canned food, tarhana, Turkish name, pickles, vinegar, honey, jam, cheese, and they product all, mostly all raw materials from the forest. They are related with forest, and they produce it and sell, and they can sell it in their channels. It is very important to improve to women in society. I think I can say this.
So I hope that the encouragement continues with successful projects and encouraging projects like Professor Ortegan, and we can change that situation where women seem to be less encouraged to join cooperatives. Maybe that's the previous situation, and hopefully that change from your projects and similar projects will turn that nature into something more encouraging for equality and also for expanded benefits for both men and women. Maybe before, okay.
Thank you for your presentations. I had a question for Gertrude. I have a particular interest in rural villages in Zimbabwe relating to a potential project. And so I was thinking about your point. It was really interesting to hear about the women's and men's differentiations. And I wondered if you could say more about the cultural and spiritual value that was something that was unified across women's and men's roles and contributions.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. You say that you'd like me to speak about, to throw more light about the spiritual values?
And the cultural values. Yeah.
Oh, and the cultural values. Okay. You see, both men and women attach cultural and spiritual values to forests. That's what I said. And this enhances social cohesion and the sense of well-being and unity. Forests have sacred groves. I'm talking from the perspective of indigenous peoples and local communities. Forests in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa especially, you find like sacred places, rocks, trees, you know, located in forests. Usually, that's where people go, like you'd be going to church. You'd be going to a mosque. You'd be going, these people go to these sacred groves and to worship their ancestors. They attach certain spiritual values to trees, you know, and this tree, for a long, that's their way of conservation. We have taboos, for instance, concerning, we have clans, and our clans are traced from a common ancestor. Now, those clans have what you call a totem. A totem is like an animal, which you relate with like a sister or brother. You will not kill it, you will protect it and defend it. And if my totem, for instance, is a bird, a small bird called an egret, white cattle egret, that's my bird, my totem. And it's the totem of my father, because we are patrilineal, we inherit from our fathers. So it's the totem of my father, his great-grandfather, my brothers, and everybody in that lineage. That's our totem. You don't touch it. We don't touch it. Other people might touch it. And when we went to study, when we dug deeper into this issue, we discovered that that was the attempt of African peoples at conservation. That has been a conservation measure for Africans. So there are people who have totems like monkeys, totems like lions. Totems are different for different families. So I brought that in because of the spiritual value people attach to forests. There's a case in my country recently, they were constructing a road. And that road was requiring a tree to be uprooted. And people attach spiritual value to that tree. They believe that their ancestral spirits reside in that tree. So they fought very hard to resist the government attempts at uprooting that tree. They wanted the road to pass on the side and, you know, not even very close, because you are going to make noise for these spiritual beings. Well, now that we have Christianity, I don't know the validity of those claims. I don't. But I know that they've helped conserve forests. They've brought social cohesion because, for instance, if we have something we agree on, we agree on together, then we are going to be in unity. We are going to have cohesion. Yeah, so that's what I meant. I hope I've made myself clear. Thank you. We can speak about it later after. Yeah, thank you.
Very, very good response, Gertrude. And we've added also our understanding about social cohesion and that spiritual values and cultural values. So with what the message saying about the threats of deforestation, you're basically uprooting values, spiritual values, and uprooting identities of people, uprooting their totems. So that's very interesting, Gertrude, and a very strong message as well. I have a question maybe. I'm looking at the room for anyone who wants to. I'll go with you first. Come up to the mic.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Yvonne Chanji. I'm from the University of Eastern Finland, but I'm Cameroonian. So my research, I'm focusing on the power relations and gender disparities in the protected areas. And my question is for the professor, because he mentioned that there was the challenge of women in the involving women. And in my case, I realized that from the cultural aspect, involving women in forest management was probably because whether we kind of want to acknowledge it or not, the women have to take permission from the household head, which is normally the man. And in our situation, it was always difficult. We always had to make sure that we involve the men in some of these discussions to enable them to allow their wives to come to also participate. So was that like the case when he was also, was that like the case like prevented women from being involved in some of these activities? And probably for the whole panel, how can we in general ensure that there is more women participation, and especially from the cultural point of view where the women always have to rely on the household head, who is the man, to enable them to partake in some of these activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In traditional men cooperatives, men's a member of the cooperatives and take from state to cut trees in the forest. And when they go to the forest, they work together with all family, women and men, but just men members of the cooperatives, first. Second, women related to forest mostly because they have some animals cattle in the forest, grazing, and they hold non-wood products in forest, and they make these products to meal in their home. But people, men, don't see the woman's strong all times. But now it is changing. Woman is changing this situation. They do something because they have a big, strong, because a lot of things they do in forest and home. And they are in together now, all women in rural areas, and they are produce some product. And men saw this and they accept it because they gain money. They produce from their product, they produce some product and they gain money now. Because in rural areas, for example, forest villages are very poor country, very poor part of the city. And people want to migrate to big cities or cities. There is no people now, villages, for example, forest villages. And they don't have any gain, any money. And women now is producing. It is very important to men and all people in the rural area now. I can say that.
Fabiola, you wanted to add for the second part of that question also?
I want to add something that, for example, in Peru, we have a case. It's native communities, an organization of women, native communities. And this woman wants to prepare the first managing plan in the native community for non-timber products, especially medicinal plants, because the men of the community look for other opportunities, because it's a rural area, very poor, there's no opportunities there, and they take all the valuable wood, for example. They take out, they sell in the past, and they are trying to look for more opportunities, and the opportunities are on the cities, and they move for work, but the woman stay there with the children. And for that reason, they take the decision to prepare the first management plan led by women in a native community and produce non-timber products. And they organize and they have these products and sell the medicine plants in the local markets, and they have money and return to the community with that money, and the men see that initiative and said, there's some opportunities here. But they are not really familiar with the non-timber products. The only product that they work on the past, it's logging, it's wood. But this is a difference, and now women are trying to introduce this opportunity, and they are really success. But the huge problem is access to finance, because they don't have a history of credit. And for that reason, it's not really an opportunity to have the money for a bank or something like that. And the other, it's capacities. Because in the past, all the projects of the government, NGOs, works to develop capacities of the men in the forestry sector, not work to develop capacities of the woman. And inclusive to use the medicinal plant, the non-timber products, you need some technical capacities. That this is two of the things that we're trying to work on that. Thank you.
Thank you for adding that, Fabiola. We have a few minutes left, and I just would like to, Gertrude would like to add, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly add that she wanted to know what prevents women from these activities. In addition to what others have said, you know that socially constructed roles, women have been assigned heavy burdens of unpaid care work, and usually they are time poor. They don't have time to commit to activities such as those we are talking about. But also their cultural and religious beliefs, values, practices, and norms that forbid women to associate, for instance, with men in public spaces who are not their husbands. That, for instance, in the religion of Muslims, they will not allow women to, go to a meeting and find that they are seated together with men who are strange. So how do we ensure there is more women participation? We should do what she has said, gender transformative approaches. For instance, training in gender at the grassroots to create male champions that are supporting the gender equality, And then we should take the trouble to schedule activities in consultation with women so that we know what time is available for them to be able to participate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gertrude. And I believe Mylene also wants to add to that very
Yes.
Important question.
Yes, just a quick response to the second question. I think for governments, NGOs, and other development workers, the minimum that we could do is to ensure gender balance in terms of participation and leadership roles, and to ensure that there is proper monitoring. And to encourage other communities, to encourage other women, we could highlight the best practices of already existing women leaders, women farmers, and forest producers, so that they could see, this could work, this is possible. So hopefully they will be inspired and they will be able to stand up for themselves in their own communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're pushing to the time limit. You wanted to ask a question. Okay, one last question. It's very good that we have good audience participation.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. And I'm really happy to see a very diverse panel today. It brings me a lot of joy. My question to you, Mylene, as you just said, and like to everyone, so obviously there is like potential of men exploiting women and their labor as they kind of generate income for their communities. Like, do you think that there's a risk of that being exploited? Thank you. I don't know if it was a clear enough question. If it's not, let me know and I'll try and elaborate, but thanks.
I think I would also ask the help later of my colleagues here in the panel, but there might be some risk, but it could be addressed by a strong FFPO who knows what the criteria are, how to make things more sustainable, more gender sensitive, more resilient, so that no one is being exploited and no one is being left behind. But I would say that it is a continuous, ongoing learning process for everyone, because not everyone knows what the gender norms are, not everyone knows what the culture is in a specific community or in a specific country, and so on. So the important thing is that we are all open to learning about these new things, and we try to position ourselves in the position of empathy to our local communities and to people in general. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Last word from...
To answer the question.
Sure.
Yep. I think that we have risk every day of different things. There are some cultures now that, for example, they don't put value on the work of the woman. No?
Yeah.
They prepare food, they take care of the children, there's a lot of things like that. In these kind of initiatives, when woman has the opportunity to have money, they can take decisions. And this is really important because they can take some decisions without the permit of the men or inclusive other women. And this kind of independence, it's really important for women, because we need to remember that violence, it's one of the most difficult things for women, no? And it's in relation with the independence, the economy independence. And risk we have every day. And we need to work to empower women and to educate the society, men and women, to have this balance. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabiola. Since most of our speakers here in the panel have spoken, I would like to leave the last question to Xiang Ma. I hope that you are still online. Maybe just a question with also the responses from the panel, and then the last response of Fabiola related to vulnerabilities. Maybe you can say, what is the future plan of FAO in social protection following what seems to be the success of Guyana and Kenya programs? But then there are also some reactions here on the floor of how to deal with risk, how to deal with challenges. So maybe you can take that last question.
Thank you, Femi, for the opportunity. Yes, I feel we are, as I mentioned before, so we conducted a series of studies at country level and also global level, and also cooperate with IFFF. in supporting countries at the operational level as well. So currently, we are developing a framework for forest-dependent communities, social protection framework for forest-dependent communities. And then, so there are two major approaches we are taking. One is to expand social protection coverage for forest-dependent communities. And the second approach, second aspect is to strengthen coherence between forestry and social protection. So we are trying to identify and identify the detailed approaches under each of these aspects. So in order to provide a kind of guide for countries to take reference. So regarding the, yes, and so I heard a lot of, about from other panelists regarding the women and youth. Women and youth have their specific vulnerabilities, as mentioned a lot by the other panelists. So they need a special social protection to help them to deal with risks and shocks. In addition to that, so panelists also talk about value chain development by women and youth. So social protection is not only about preventive intervention or protective interventions, but also is about promotive interventions. So that social protection instruments can help value chain development as well, support value chain development as well, when the coherence between social protection and the forestry can be established. So that's, and then these two policies can work together to support value chain development. So in either non-wood forest products or wood-based products, specifically for women and youth, to enable women and youth participate in the value chain development, and also further benefit more from participation of value chain, of various value chains. Thank you.
Thank you, Xiangma, and thank you for staying this late for the session. Now we've come to a conclusion, and I'd like to thank everyone for being here. I think we pretty much have been able to successfully cover our objectives. At the beginning, I mentioned about well-being and what the aspects of well-being are, and that includes also vision, being able to actually provide or have access to the basic needs, provisions for food, livelihood, etc. But then there's also that sense of belonging, the sense of keeping your beliefs, your culture, your identity, and and having those opportunities to build a sense of agency. And we heard all of those aspects of well-being being articulated by our panelists, and what the threats there are in the present and currently also persisting. But then there's also the positive element, and that's what the social cohesion is also helping out with, is to address those threats, but at the same time facing the opportunities with solidarity, with capacity, and with that sense of vision. So I think that, and also the particular role of forest farm producer organizations and each of the members of those organizations being seen as very important, the women, the youth, how you can encourage more of those women and youth to participate and also take part in the decision making. I'd like to also borrow from what Fabiola had mentioned about the actions being basically economic decisions as well, and they intersect with the cultural, with the social, and it's really because of that cohesion at the community level that also helps address and interact with those pressures and also those opportunities. So thank you very much. I hope that that was enlightening and also meaningful for those that are here as well as online. Thank you so much.